In this video, we're going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines and how to write rules with them. Okay, so first we're going to just review in general how to write the rules. So you have this worksheet in front of you, and the first question, we're going to do the first one together, and then I'll let you try the other ones. So you can either pause the video and try the other ones, or watch the rest of the video and learn how to do. We'll do one of each so that you can understand how to do each of these types of problems. So let's look at question one. So we want to remember two things. When we're writing an equation, we need to remember that the equation always is mx plus b. Hopefully you got that memorized by now. And hopefully you've got it memorized that m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. Okay, so those are two key pieces that we need to know to write any line, whether it be a parallel line or a perpendicular or just a regular old line. So question one, they give us the slope. So hey, they gave us half the answer. The answer so far is 5x plus something. We don't know what that something is though, because they gave us just a regular point. So remember, what we do is we call this point B and we start to plug in 3 and 13. Remember, 3 is an x value, 13 is a y. So we're going to plug in 13 for y here and 3 for x. Because I need a rule that works. When I plug in 3, I get an answer of 13. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what b makes this rule work. So I get 13 equals 15 plus b. Solving for b, I'll subtract 15 from both sides, and I get b equals negative 2. So my rule for number one is y equals 5x plus negative 2. That's my rule. I can check once again if this point is right, but I know it should work because I already tried. If I plug it in, I should get 13, and I will because I'll get 5 times 3, which is 15, plus a negative 2, which is 13. So this rule works for my point, and I know it works for my slope because it's right there. So that's the correct rule for number one. So parallel and perpendicular, the good news is it's the same process, okay? But the thing is, the clue is a little bit different. So parallel and perpendicular. Question number 7. Now, if you want to try questions 1 through 6 on your own, you are required to do them to complete this worksheet, this assignment. Try 1 through 6 on your own. Pause the video now and check back on how to do question 7 when you're ready to do question 7. Question 7 requires you to know about parallel lines. Okay? It has to be parallel to this rule. And what you should have learned in class is that parallel lines have the same slope. That is what you should have learned in class. They have the same slope. So when I look at this rule, I'm looking for the slope. And remember, the slope, according to our rule, is always the number that's multiplying x. So if I look at the rule, I see the slope is right here. So my rule for my line that I'm trying to write is going to have 3/5 for the slope. Just like the rule in question 7 here. The rule in question 7 has 3/5 for the slope as well. So these rules have to have the same slope. Now remember, the rule should be mx plus b. So once again, I have to find b, and they gave me a point. So I'm going to plug that point in. Funny enough, they actually gave me the intercept, but just to get practice and to make sure we do the same thing every time, so we always get it right, we're going to plug in 0, 0, because that's how I'm going to get my b value. Plugging it in, I get 0 equals 0 plus b, so that means b must be 0. So my rule is y equals 3/5 x plus 0. You don't really need the 0, but we'll write it just so we know that we did the work and we found the b value. Okay, so the key with parallel lines is that they have the same slope. So take a moment and try question 8. Look at the rule. This is a line, and we want to write an equation of a line parallel to this line. Because of this fact that parallel lines have the same slope, the slope for this line that we're trying to write has to be 4. So question 8, you should start the rule with 4x plus something. Now go ahead and try and find that something, the b-intercept that is, the y-intercept that is, the b value. Find that something using the point that you see here. Try questions 7 through 12. Pause the video now, try the questions, come back to the video to get help with perpendicular lines. Okay, last but not least, we're going to look at perpendicular lines. So to summarize, our number one goal is to write a rule. And in order to write the rule, we have to have mx plus b. So we need the slope and the y-intercept. Now, with parallel lines, the ones we just did, remember parallel means they go in the same direction. That's a pair of parallel lines. Those parallel lines have the same slope. Okay, that's parallel. But now, questions 13 through 18 ask for perpendicular. Perpendicular lines also have a neat relationship with their slope. Remember, perpendicular means they cross at a nice right angle, or a nice corner, if you want to think of it that way. A nice right angle. So they actually go, these lines go in opposite directions. Okay, and that's really important. If you can remember the fact that perpendicular looks like they're going in opposite directions. One's going northeast, the other one's going in the opposite direction. So northwest is going out direction the other way. The perpendicular lines, they have a relationship between the slope that is the following. If one slope is a over b, the other slope is b over a and a negative in front. Okay, so this is really weird, but what we're going to do is we're going to flip the fraction and the sign. Okay, so the fraction went from a over b to b over a, and it went from positive to negative. Okay, sometimes maybe I'll take it from negative and turn it positive. But that's how I'm going to work with perpendicular. And you should have recognized in your class that it was what was happening was you were taking this slope triangle that had a rise and a run. And this particular slope triangle was going down. And you flipped it so that the rise became the run and the run became the rise. So this part became the run. And this rise was the original run. And that's what you should have noticed in class the other day to understand why things were flipping. And also notice one slope is negative and one slope is positive. So let's try that with 13 and I'll get you started on 14. Perpendicular lines can be tricky. Let's look at 13. So 13, we first find our slope of the line they were talking about because we need to write an equation of a line perpendicular to this line that they wrote right here. So we look at the slope, and the slope here is 3/5. So we need to convert it to a perpendicular line. So we flip the fraction, and we flip the sign. So it went from positive to negative, that's a sign flip, and it went from 3 over 5 to 5 over 3. The fraction flipped as well. So now my new rule will be y equals negative 5/3 x plus something. Okay? Plus some number. So that is the line perpendicular. The next step remains exactly the same. So everything you've been doing with the next step is the same that you'll do here. You're going to find the rest of the rule by plugging in the point that they gave you. So I'm going to plug in my point here, 0, 0. I'm going to put in 0 for x and 0 for y. So my rule is 0, negative 5/3 times 0 plus something. So it'll just be 0 equals 0 plus, now that's something we'll call b, b. So b has to be 0. So my rule is negative 5/3 x plus 0. Okay, so the process is the same. Find the slope, put it in the rule, use the point to find the intercept. Same process for every single problem on this worksheet. Now look at number 14. This one poses an interesting problem, so I'll get you started on number 14. Once again, we want to remember that perpendicular lines, you flip the fraction and the sign. So since my rule was y is 4x minus 1 for number 14, I need to take the slope, which is 4, and I need to do this process. I need to flip it by flipping the fraction and the sign. Okay, so this is going to flip to negative. I know that for sure because 4 has to turn into negative something. But then I need to flip this fraction, but look at 4. 4 is not a fraction. So you have to remember your fraction skills and remember that any number can be a fraction by putting it over 1. Now 4 is a fraction. That's still the number 4. Now I flip it into negative 1/4. Okay? So these are two slopes that are different. One will be perpendicular to the other. Okay? This was the slope of the line they gave me. This is the slope of the line I'm looking for. So my rule for question 14 is negative 1/4. X plus b. I don't know what b is yet. So I found the slope by flipping the 4 into negative 1/4. Now I got to find the rest of the rule. I'm going to use my point, plug in what I know. I'm going to put 6 in for y, and I'm going to put negative 2 in for x. And I'm going to solve for b. So 6 equals negative 1/4 times negative 2. Negative 1/4 times negative 2 is positive 1/2. If you're not sure about that, try to use your calculator. Don't be afraid to change this to a decimal. Think about money. Quarters and money we're really good at. Plus b. Subtracting 1/2 from both sides, I get 5.5 equals b. Okay, b's alone, 5.5 is b. So my rule for question 14 is y equals negative 1/4 x plus 5.5. There's the answer for number 14. This slope was perpendicular to the slope here. In the question on question 14, the slopes were perpendicular, and my b value I found by using my point. So same process. Find the slope, then find b using the point. Try the next 4 questions, ask your teacher if you have questions, and check your answers with the teacher.